Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this Transitions to Medical Education webinar series. Tonight's focus is navigating residency applications with self-awareness, finding success among high achievers, and this event is hosted by AACOM's Council on Residency Placement. My name is Katie Harden, and I am a Residency Placement Coordinator with Kansas City University, and I have been in my role for about 4 years. Prior to that, I worked in medical education at a hospital, so I've worked with medical students through the residency process and clinical experiences for over 20 years now. And joining me this evening is Lisa Shelburne. Lisa, would you like to introduce yourself really quick?
Hello, I'm Lisa Shelburne, and I am the Director of Career Services at Lincoln Memorial University DeBusk College of Osteopathic Medicine. I'm located on the Harrogate, Tennessee campus. I've been in my role for almost 12 years, and I work with students in all 4 years for career planning and residency selection.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us as a panelist tonight, Lisa. So before we kick into everything, I do want to go over a few housekeeping notes. So this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be posted to the CORP and the AOGME web pages within about a week or 7 days. All webinar participants are in listen-only mode. If you experience any kind of technical issues, please use the chat feature, and the AACOM staff that are joining us this evening will do what they can to assist you. If you have any questions for us, the presenters, during the webinar, please feel free to submit them through the Q&A feature at any time. And if time permits, at the end of the webinar, we'll try to also answer some of those questions live for you. All right, so let's get started. So tonight's objectives, we have 3 important things. So number 1 is to discuss recognizing the role and the importance of self-awareness in the residency application process, and discuss with you ways to develop strategies for crafting a strong and authentic residency application. And lastly, help you enhance your confidence and resilience throughout this residency application journey. All right, Miss Lisa, would you like to discuss this next slide with us?
Yes, thank you. So the role and the importance of self-awareness, and this is a really an important thing for students to start doing. And you can start day 1. You can reassess it all the way through. So assessing your background, your academics, and of course, that's something that programs are going to look at, is your medical school academic performance and your licensing exam performance. So a lot of students are going to say, well, you know, I'm a first-year student, I don't have licensing exam performance. And you don't have that yet, but you're going to have it. So being sure that your medical school academic performance is going to build you up to being ready to do well on your licensing exams. And those are 2 things that programs are going to use to filter the residency applications. So that's one part of being competitive and being self-aware of your competitiveness, is how well you do on these 2. That's kind of a metric. So assessing that early. And then the experiences, your meaningful and longitudinal volunteering is something to really start building. So not just assessing it, but always continually building it. Your leadership experience, your research, your publications, your work and teaching experience, and your unique life experiences. So that's one thing to remember, is there's no 2 applications that are the same. So building upon your academics and then adding in the other experiences, and sometimes those can fill those gaps. So students say, well, I really didn't have time to do any volunteer work. Well, then try to make what you do a little more meaningful with the leadership experiences. Students say, well, I didn't have time to do research. And research is important if the residency programs you're looking at are looking for research, if you really like research. So being very, very careful and being self-aware about you and your limitations in your first and second year is very important with looking at your self-awareness and getting your application where it needs to be at every point in your medical school journey. Using the resources, so not just your school resources, but national data. So always being sure that you're relying on your school to give you that guidance, paying attention to the resources that are available from your school, from a data standpoint, also from the national resources. I always tell students, look at all the resources. Don't just look at one, look at them all. And at the end of the day, bring it back to the people you pay to give you advice. And that's your mentors at your school.
Next slide, please. So Lisa, did you want to touch on some of those national resources a little bit?
So here's some of the national resources. The NRMP match data has the charting outcomes in the match. The senior students, the US, it's an excellent resource. It updates every 2 years. And that is something to really look at to gauge your national competitiveness. And you can compare that to your school competitiveness. The AACOM postdoc guide is an excellent resource for programs that you may be a little more competitive for. Programs, looking at the programs that have historically been DO, AOA sponsored programs, and how you move forward looking at those. The ACGME Residency Program Search is another good place to look at programs. You can find new programs there. So sometimes programs just coming out, you may want to know where, maybe you know, I want to do neurology, but I want to stay in Colorado. So looking at the ACGME website and the program search and keeping up to date with those, what programs are opening up, what programs are expanding their classes. So that can really help you as you look forward to what you're going to apply to and where. The Doximity Residency Navigator is another good resource. My favorite resource is the ARIS Participating Specialties and Programs. That's a resource that you can click on and see all the programs that are participating in ARIS. It will link you with the individual programs also. FREEDA is another good website to look at for weighing programs and what programs are looking for. Also a good website to look at for the programs that you may be interested in doing those auditions and away rotations. Residency Explorer tool, they're doing some updates and some new things. They're going to have a webinar coming up soon, so a plug for that. Using the Residency Explorer tool is going to help you compare yourself to others with your same profile. And you can use that to give you some more information on the national data. And then Texas Star, if your school participates in that, they just did a call out to fourth-year students to start giving you that school-specific information. So fourth-year students right now are filling out their profiles. And that's another really good resource to give you national data and some school-specific data.
Absolutely. And I will say my favorite tools that I use with my students are definitely the NRMP charting outcomes. I think it helps you assess right fit specialties. And then Residency Explorer is my other go-to for right fit programs. Residency Explorer is a great place to be able to see how DO friendly these programs are, if they have any regional biases, how competitive they are, because you can see how many applicants they had compared to the national average in the last season and what % get interviews. So there's a lot of data within these tools that we really encourage you to check out because it can really help you assess your own profile and your competitiveness to help you make some decisions. So that goes right into the next topic of, for our first and second year students, you're probably wondering at this point, what can I do now? How can I help myself have a stronger and authentic application in applying to residencies? The first most important thing is your academics. Always, always, always make your academics the highest priority. If you are a student that is having some struggles academically, I encourage you to stay focused solely on your academics and not worry about trying to add in other things. Don't worry about the extra experiences because your academics are the priority. If you are a student that has had already some academic challenges and maybe you've had some course failures, it's not the end of the world for you. There are absolutely opportunities for you to match successfully. There are a number of specialties that are very forgiving of those kinds of things. Unfortunately, there are some specialties that are highly competitive that don't, but work with your advisor to help you identify the right fit specialties for you. And that goes right into the next bullet of assessing your specialty goals. Some of you in first and second year already have some pretty good ideas of what you are navigating or gravitating towards. Maybe it's primary care, maybe it's a surgical specialty. And what each of those areas are focusing on in what they're looking for in an applicant is a bit different. And so as you work on your CV, which if you have not started working on a CV, we strongly encourage you to start building your CV. Put everything from undergrad to present on your CV. Your work, your volunteering, your leadership, teaching, if you've had military research, publications, all of your professional memberships, honors and awards. Hopefully your school has a CV template or some support resources for you. But get everything plugged into that CV. You'd be surprised how many times throughout the next few years you're going to get to use that CV. Our students, a lot of the core sites for third year before they get there want to see a copy of their CV. As they are all applying for audition rotations during the spring of their third year, a lot of those audition rotation applications are requiring a copy of their CV. When you go and do audition rotations, bring a copy with you because they may want to see it. Or as you interview, they may want to see it. As you go to conferences, it's always great to have a copy with you. So always keep that up to date with the most current information that you can. It's a great way to help you also prepare for your application later on. So as you figure out what specialties you are gravitating towards, you're building this CV, you're going to need to assess how competitive you are, what gaps you might have in your experiences. And if you have the capacity beyond academics to be able to take on other things, be intentional about the kinds of experiences that you get involved with. Why do we say that? Well, the application honestly has changed quite a bit the last few years, where you can't just plug everything into your application anymore. You have to handpick things from your CV and your background because you're limited in how many experiences you can put in. For instance, right now in the ARIS application, it's 10 experiences. The residency CAS application is 12. So 12 things from undergrad to present that you get to handpick to put into your application. And so be intentional. They're really focusing on quality, not quantity. This focus of a very holistic review of the application has become so important now. And so if you are somebody leaning towards primary care, my advice is get involved in your community, serve others, learn about the challenges and the disparities and the barriers within your community. And some of the best things you can do is volunteering with nonprofits in your community. And then if you are looking at going into a surgical specialty, leadership is a great thing, but also that volunteering, if you're still unsure, you're undecided, I don't know which kind of path I want, serve in your community, because there's so many things so many skills and traits and just level of understanding that you gain from serving others and working with various and varieties of populations. You learn how to more effectively communicate. You work in a team environment. You're learning about those challenges of the different populations that you'll be serving. And all of that will play into your application, and you'll be able to share those details about those experiences and show these programs, hey, I have had all of these opportunities to experience things that have really prepared me effectively for this specialty. And like Lisa touched on, there's some specialties and really program specific that really want research. And so if you are looking at a specialty or programs that research is a higher priority, during first and second year is a great time to get involved in some research opportunities and try to get published. Now, I will warn you, they do want a little bit more beefed up research than just doing a case report. They do want to see you get involved in data analysis and writing the manuscript and getting published in a reputable journal. Those are the kinds of things they're looking for. And I have some students like, well, how do I get that network? Connecting with alumni is something I think a lot of people kind of forget about. I, on a regular basis, am connecting our students with graduates and trying to help connect them with individuals either in their specialty that they're looking at applying to, or even the program that is their number one program they're hoping to match into. I actually just had a meeting with a student this morning, and I've already connected them with a graduate. They're a student applying internal medicine in Chicago. So not only was I able to connect them with a graduate that just matched in the last 2 years, in internal medicine, but in a program in Chicago where they're hoping to. Alumni love to help and connect and provide you guidance and mentorship, and they can give you a lot of inside scoop about a program. They can help you learn more about the quality of the program, give you some tips on how to help yourself shine and stand out with the program. So alumni are a great way, and if they're residents, they're also working on research. ACGME accreditation requires that every resident work on scholarly activity. So they know how challenging it was to get research, connect with alumni and see if they need any help with their research projects that they're working on as a resident. The other thing you can do in networking is attend national or regional conferences, specialty specific, but I'll give you this one caveat: don't attend conferences unless you're willing to step out and introduce yourself to complete strangers. Sit down at that table at breakfast in the morning where it's full of people instead of the empty one next to it, and go and sit down next to someone before a session starts and introduce yourself to them and spark up a conversation. Do a little bit of homework about the programs that have booths in the exhibit hall and go talk to them. Come into that exhibit hall with a question or two about their program. It's great ways to network and connect with the residents in the program, with faculty in the program. I've even had students get audition rotation opportunities, invitations, because they met a program director at a conference. It was really exciting for them because it was actually a program they were one of their top programs. So it's a great way to get some opportunities to interact with programs that are higher on your list, but also to learn more about the specialty. The more you understand and learn about what this specialty really means and what they're looking for, the more you can beef up your application over the next couple of years to help make it a strong application. The last couple of things, so I already touched on mentorship, but so Connect with Alumni is a great specialty specific mentor. And if you can connect with alumni that are current residents, the great thing about that is they just went through this residency application process. It's changed a lot the last 5 years. And so it's hard to have someone that's practicing in that specialty advise you on the residency application process right now. But a physician that's practicing in this specialty is phenomenal to give you advice and tips just on what is the practice like? What is this specialty like? What are your practice options once you finish residency? What is the work-life balance? What is the day-to-day life like in this field and the patients that they serve? And so connect, with alumni that are residents or physicians that are practicing in this specialty. The other thing you can do also is become a member of some of these national specialty organizations or societies. And a lot of them actually have mentorship programs where they will help connect you with physicians that are practicing in the specialty. So, and the other benefit of becoming a medical student member of some of these national organizations, first of all, most of them are free for you as a medical student. There's very few that charge a fee. But once you become a student member of, say, the American College of Osteopathic Surgeons or the American College of Family Physicians, you'll start getting communication from that organization. If they sometimes they as an organization host virtual residency fairs or other education events that are targeted to students, and such as how to have a successful interview, or there's a variety of topics that they'll do. And sometimes residency programs themselves will use that listserv to help ask information about their program to be distributed. So it's a great way to learn about the specialty, to learn about programs, and to have opportunities to network and connect with others, whether it be physicians you're seeking out for mentorship or even just programs that you're wanting to learn more about. Lisa, anything else you would recommend that I may have missed when it comes to first and second year students?
No, I think you've hit the nail on the head with connecting with the residents, connecting with the mentors, with physicians, and connecting with students in the year ahead of you. So I think with first year students, looking at the second year students and what they have done. And so second year students looking at the third year students and being sure that you are doing it with your own self-awareness, because everybody's not in the same situation. So a student who may be applying and not getting, maybe they're not getting the auditions they want, and you're like, well, I don't need to apply, because that's what that self-awareness piece is about. You always don't know the full application of your classmates or of the class in front of you. Not everybody's transparent about what's in their application. So being sure that you're self-aware of what's in your application, and when you comparing the same things.
I love that. One of my favorite parts about the personal statement is that you get to be unique. You get to tell your story, and it's completely different than every single other person. And what is right for you as you look at residency programs, and what's important to you is going to be very, very different than the next student, because your priorities are different. Your likes, your desires, what you're searching for is going to be different than the next person. And because of all of that uniqueness, it allows you to have a very unique application as well. So let's jump into our OMS 3. So our third year students. Lisa, would you mind touching on this and continuing that conversation of the strategies?
And again, assessing competitiveness based on academics and your experiences. And when we say, look at your competitiveness against our class, against our graduates, against national, well, that's verified sources. So when you're assessing your competitiveness, be sure you're looking at verified sources. You're not saying, well, Katie over there was in the class ahead of me and she applied to all these programs and she didn't get what she wanted, so I don't need to apply. You need to really be sure that you're looking at your academics, your experiences, and what you're interested in doing. Developing a parallel plan, parallel path is my favorite. Never say, I'm going to have a backup plan. I don't like the word backup plan. You can ask anybody that I've counseled on this. Don't call it a backup plan, because it's just creating a path or a plan to get you where you want to go in your career. So for a residency application, the biggest thing you really need to look at when you're assessing your competitiveness
Did Lisa freeze? Lisa, did we lose you? Okay, so it is frozen on the student side too. I want to make sure it wasn't just me. So we'll see if Lisa can get reconnected, if our AACOM people can try to connect with her. I'll try to continue on with what she was talking about. I love to call it dually applying with my students. And if you want to improve your success and the strength of your application, part of that is also making wise decisions. And sometimes that involves dually applying or having a parallel path where you recognize the specialty you're applying to is either highly competitive, or sometimes you're not a strong applicant for that specialty. And sometimes it's a combination. And recognizing that to increase your odds of matching, sometimes it's in your best interest to apply to a second specialty that's much less competitive at the same time. So that if you don't secure enough interviews in that first specialty, you are securing enough in the second specialty. And so that you can match and hopefully avoid SOAP altogether. Something our dean taught me many, many years ago, long before I even worked here at KCU, was he used the term control the narrative. He said, if you'd be willing to SOAP into a different specialty, why not control that narrative and proactively apply to that specialty right out of the gate? Because by doing so, you get to control which programs you apply to, where those programs are, and the quality of those programs. Miss Lisa's back. So Lisa, I had just finished touching on controlling the narrative for you. If you want to jump into the next bullet of the strong personal statement.
All right, thank you. So crafting a strong personal statement is very important. As Miss Katie just told you, that's something that you can give your story. It's very personal. That's going to set you apart during the application process. And for third years, it's really important. A lot of programs, audition programs are going to ask for your personal statement. So looking at your school resources, looking at national resources, Careers in Medicine has a lot of resources for personal statements. And looking at your school resources also, be sure that you start working on that early, and being ready for application season. Even as a second year, if those programs that you're applying to for core sites, depending on how your school does that, some of our programs do accept applications for core sites for clinical rotations, and they do ask for that, ask for a personal statement and a CV. So showcasing your strengths and your skills and your traits for that specialty is very important. And then addressing red flags. What happened? How'd you fix it? And how's it going to impact you moving forward? So students always panic about any kind of a red flag. And a red flag is not necessarily failing a board exam. I mean, it can be, but it can also be if you don't have something in your application you feel like you need. So being sure you can say, what happened? How'd you fix it? And how's it going to impact you moving forward? Being sure that you can let the program know that you're upfront about it. Programs really do appreciate that. There's a really good webinar that AACOM had a couple of months ago on addressing red flags, and I really want to refer you to that. And it was one of the best webinars that I've attended from a program director's viewpoint. So select your experiences for your application. ARIS will allow you 10, Residency CAS 12. Now that's currently, that can always change. But selecting those experiences and try to keep them concise with quality experiences, not repeating yourself for several experiences. And if your school does not use noteworthy characteristics, trying to build on the noteworthy characteristics and maybe go into a little detail in your application, but not repeating yourself. So making yourself stand out, keeping those strategies from your first and second year, like good academics, strong academics, little research, a little leadership, a little volunteering. You don't have to do everything, but just be sure what you do is intentional. When you select your experiences, then use national data to help you determine your signaling and your geographic preferences. So signaling and geographic preferences as you apply to residency is huge in the application process. So there's a lot of national data that's really showing those signals can get you through that filter when sometimes you're just a little below some of the filters that they've set. If you signal those programs, they're going to be a little more likely to look at you and offer you that audition or that interview.
And I know for some students, the idea of like, how do I do all this when I'm not strong academically? Well, what's great is you get to choose what pieces of your background you share in your application. And I don't want any student to be discouraged if they've had some struggles academically, because you have a great opportunity to showcase so many of your other skills and traits. You can be a phenomenal clinician, a great communicator, a great team player, and someone who has the ability to build a trusting relationship with their patients where they open up and confide in you. And you have opportunities to share some of your background experiences that showcase you have those skills. So there are great ways within the application to highlight some of the skills that you have that are going to make you a phenomenal physician in the specialty that you're applying to, without having to worry about the academic side. When it comes to, I know there was a question that was posed about controlling the narrative. So when we talk about controlling the narrative and you apply proactively, having that parallel plan, that parallel path, that dual application plan, when you apply to a second lesser competitive specialty, you're increasing the odds of matching and decreasing your odds of having to participate in SOAP. Here's the reality. SOAP sucks. I don't know how else to say it. I hate it. I hate it for my students that have to participate in it. And it's kind of chaos. Like, you never know what specialties are going to have programs with unfilled positions. You never know how many or where those programs are. So when you control the narrative, you get to pick which programs you were already be willing to soap into a different specialty. So you can be intentional about the programs that you apply to, so that they're programs that you truly want, because in soap, those programs may have filled and not be available. So you can decrease your odds of having to participate in SOAP by dually applying, or having that parallel plan where you do apply to more than one specialty at the same time. Like I'd said earlier, before Lisa jumped back in, if you don't have enough interviews in that number one specialty of yours, by dually applying or having that parallel plan and applying to that second specialty, you are hopefully going to secure enough interviews in that specialty to be able to match. And just so you know how the match algorithm works, I think this is important for a lot of people because they misunderstand how the algorithm works. It works in the favor of the applicant. So it's going down your list one by one. It's not jumping around on your list. So if it goes down your list and it gets down to that second specialty, if you had not have had that second specialty on your list, you would have soaped and had to scramble into finding a position. And for a lot of these specialties that are highly competitive, they don't ever have positions in soap, so you were going to have to apply to something else anyways. Lisa, anything else you can think of to chime in on that?
Well, I think avoiding soap, and that's where I was when I froze and my electricity went out, so I apologize for that. But avoiding soap, I don't think students realize what the level of programs are. And so they hear about, oh, this program forgot to turn in their rank order list and there was 10 anesthesia programs. Well, you've got to remember who your competition is. And people say, well, I can always soap into family medicine or internal medicine. Well, it's not that those programs are less competitive. It's that there are more of those programs, so they don't feel at the same rate some of the more competitive programs feel. So those programs that are in SOAP are still competitive, because you have people who may have had really strong applications and the numbers were just against them. So you've got an orthopedic surgery applicant who maybe had 4 interviews, maybe had they felt like a pretty good shot, but they didn't match. So in SOAP, they may decide, well, I'm going to do family medicine, do a sports medicine fellowship. That makes those applications going to those programs a lot more competitive. And you can't do anything during SOAP to draw attention to yourself. You submit your same application. You can change your personal statement, but being prepared and controlling your narrative, you don't have to put anything on your rank order list that you don't want to go to. You rank the programs only that you want to go to. But what I tell students is to think about it. Would you rather to go to one of your lesser desired programs, or be in SOAP where you don't know what's going to be available? So building your application and then deciding to either dual apply or create that parallel path is a smart choice, and being self-aware can help you with that.
So going to our next slide, we're actually touching on those first couple of bullets already about being intentional. Make sure that utilize the data that's out there to help you make wise decisions. Like I talked about, two of my go-to sources are NRMP charting outcomes, which can help you assess. So somebody had posed the question about exam scores. So yes, NRMP charting outcomes can show you if you had a score between this range and this number last year matched successfully, this number did not. So you can see your likelihood of matching based on your licensing exam scores. So it's a great resource for that. Resources like Texas Star and Frida and Residency Explorer, and even there are some we didn't touch on. Some of these specialties have their own, like OB-GYN has the alignment check index. Emergency medicine has their own resource, and orthopedic surgery has their own resource that you can plug in certain profile components and it'll help you find right fit programs for you. So be intentional. You want to increase your odds of matching. be intentional, pick right fit programs for you, use the data and the resources that are out there and available to you to help you identify the right fit programs for you. And make sure that you are using credible resources. There are some phenomenal, Lisa's already shared a long list of these national reliable resources that are out there. There are some others that are less credible. I'm going to be honest, anytime my student says the word Reddit, I cringe. I'm not saying Reddit it's not a valuable source. There are definitely some great resources that are out there posted to Reddit. But sometimes we have seen where an individual posts something that's inaccurate and false because they're unhappy. Things didn't go the way that they wanted, and they're angry and they're bitter and they're lashing out. And so they will intentionally falsify information to bash a program. And so if you see one negative thing, take it with a grain of salt, do additional homework, connect with resources and individuals within that program to learn more about the program directly from the individuals in the program, rather than somebody who posted something anonymously. So just make sure that the resources you follow are credible resources to help you make these intentional application plans. Because again, the goal is to try to improve your odds of matching. And so use the data in your favor to make sure everything's what I like to call right fit. So right fit specialties and right fit programs. It's a conversation I have with my students pretty regularly. And throughout this process, recognize this is not an easy journey. We know it's not an easy journey. We know how stressful this all is and how much extra weight you guys have on your plate. And we're all here to do everything we can to help you through this journey. Utilize the resources you have within your institution, your advisors, but make sure you're taking care of yourself throughout all of this. Third and fourth year, I think, are on top of all the curricular components and the rotations, you're trying to make some very major life decisions. You're trying to plan your fourth year, get your auditions, you're trying to get your application ready. Oh, and you got to find all the programs you want to apply to and then apply to them. And then you got to go through auditions and interview and then try to go through the match. And so it's a lot. So take care of yourself. Take the opportunities that you have to do things that you enjoy, such as hobbies. If you have hobbies, continue them. Don't stop them just because life is getting busy and very chaotic for you. You'll find the reprieve by doing what you love is actually kind of rejuvenating and can kind of give you a nice healthy reset. But also make sure you're eating well, that you're sleeping enough. Take the breaks when you need it. If you are somebody who is into fitness and you work out, keep working out. Don't cut out those workouts because the day is too busy. You'll find you need the brain breaks, and it's rejuvenating for you. But also recognize that I will tell you, I have so much respect for my students that are willing to recognize that they need counseling services and are willing to utilize our counseling services. They're phenomenal at helping you process the emotions tied with all of this journey, and use them. Our school, we have in-person, or we've got counselors on our campus that are available for students, but we also have a 24/7 service that our students anywhere in the country, our students have the ability to utilize our counseling services at no cost. And I'm sure your schools have similar resources. So connect with them, use them. There is no shame whatsoever in utilizing those resources. I've had so many students over the years that I have kind of pushed to use counseling, and I have never once had a student come back and tell me it was a waste of the time. Every single student has come back and thanked me for it. And we're like, I've had so many that even said, I booked more appointments. I didn't realize how much I need that. So use counseling. They're a great, great resource. And again, take care of yourself. Mental health is just as important as your physical health. And throughout all this journey, maintain that support system. Your peers are going through this journey too. Rely on one another, vent to one another, talk to one another. And if you haven't heard from one of your good friends that you've been going to school with in a while, reach out to them to check on them and make sure they're doing okay too. But lean on one another through this stressful time and pick each other's brains and everything, and also connect with your loved ones. Sometimes students are like, yeah, but they don't get it. That's okay. Yeah, okay, you may be first gen you don't have a physician in your family and they just don't get it, they want to let them in a little bit, let them be there to support you as much as they are able to. It's okay if they don't get all of it, and if you have ones that do, if you're one of those that has family members that are physicians, great, they've been through it, they know, lean on them, reach out to them. It's amazing how much, I actually just had a student this morning share with me, this has kind of been lonely. Reach out to your family, reach out to the people that you care about, connect with them regularly, be intentional about reaching out to them, because you'll find it really refreshing to be able to just hear their voices. And they want to be there to support you. And we'd already talked about connecting with mentors. We'll keep in contact with those mentors throughout this journey. Those alumni that are graduates currently in residency programs, they know very real how each stage you're going through, and they can talk you through some of your questions and alleviate some of your anxieties and just help talk you through the emotions again of everything you're going through. And you have advisors all around you, whether they be academic advisors or career advisors. Use those individuals as well. Like I had already said earlier, our job is to do everything we can to help our students be successful through this process, but also help them navigate this process. We're not just here to make sure you match. We're here to help make sure you're okay through the process too, and answer any questions we can to. I want to do everything I can to help alleviate some of the anxiety and the stress of my students. Knowledge is power, and it can also help when you have enough knowledge to alleviate some of the stress. And so that's what we try to do. So reach out to your advisors, and there are a lot of other school resources that you can utilize as well. So we encourage you to reach out. So let's jump into some of the questions that had been submitted in advance. So Lisa, how can you reflect personal values of behavior rather than achievements listed on a CV? And which is a better reflection of character? What are your thoughts on this one?
Well, you've got to remember that your CV is to list not really your personal values, but what you've done. It's more of a reflection of your volunteer work, which is going to reflect your personal values. But it's more geared to telling the timeline. What's your story? Then your personal statement is going to give you the ability to give your personal values about your behavior. So being sure that you kind of compare and contrast. Don't use your personal statement to just write about one section of your CV, and use your CV to give that timeline of what you've done from undergrad. And a lot of people, they're not sure whether to use undergrad or not. Use that undergrad information if it fits into the specialty you're looking for, to show that commitment to the specialty. So perhaps you want to apply to pediatrics. But you've always been a camp counselor. You've always worked with children all the way. You worked at a child care center. You worked as a camp counselor. You did counseling at a children's with diabetes camp or something. That is something that can really be valuable on your CV, and that's going to reflect your personal values.
And one of the things that's nice about the application is, like Lisa had said, your CV is supposed to be a quick snapshot. It's a very brief timeline, but when it comes to your application, you actually have this space to expand and to write more details. And so you're not just focusing on what the job was for that experience, but you have an opportunity to touch on other aspects within that experience. For instance, I really encourage my students to touch on in that description of an experience in the application, what is this organization about? They don't know the name of okay, you listed off an organization. I didn't know that was a battered women's shelter, for instance, or that was a homeless shelter, or that was, a nonprofit that works with disabled children. But so touching on the population that you serve, and it allows you to also kind of describe how, what kind of skills and traits did you develop in the role, that personal values you get to kind of incorporate that a little bit into your description, in addition to, like Lisa had said, the personal statement. So you have the opportunity to kind of expand a bit more than what your CV reflects when you get to fill out your application itself. So going on to our next question, Lisa, what are your thoughts on mentioning personal health problems in the personal statement if they are integral to the reason for pursuing a specialty?
And that's always a tricky one that a lot of students do ask. They ask the same question if it's related to your family's health. So what if that's your reason for choosing that specialty? And that is something you certainly can discuss in your personal statement, but you want to be sure that when you discuss it, you do not divulge any personal information that you don't want to discuss in an interview, because whatever you put in that personal statement is going to be open for questions during your interview process. So you want to be sure that whatever personal information you disclose, that you're ready to discuss in depth, and that it doesn't look like you're a risk for that program. So I had a student once who really wanted to talk about some mental health struggles they had had, and they really wanted, and they were pursuing psychiatry, so that would really make that ties in well, only they kept insisting on using the words unresolved mental health issues. So unresolved and mental health issues are two different conversations. So you want to be sure when you're addressing those health issues that you are prepared to discuss them and be ready to say, again, here's what happened and here's how it brought me to this specialty. Katie, what do you think on that one?
I was going to say the same thing. I agree. Recognizing that anything you put in your application opens it up for conversation during your interview and for them to ask about it. And I have a lot of students that want the opportunity to talk more about it, but sometimes it does bring into question whether or not that health issue could creep into affect your residency journey. If there's any concern that your physical health could be compromised and could hinder your learning and the expectations of you as a resident, that's where you want to be cautious. So yeah, I have a lot of students that choose to talk about their personal health in their personal statement because of the connection to the specialty, and it further shows a passion and an appreciation as being the patient side of things. There's a different level of compassion sometimes because of your own personal encounters and journey. So going into the next question, Lisa, given this limit of experiences that are now allowed in the application, like we said earlier, it is 10 experiences in ARIS, 12 experience in residency CAS. And to clarify, that is total. You cannot pick different experiences if you're applying to multiple specialties. Whatever you put in your application, those 10 experiences is released to every specialty that you apply to within that application system. So given the limited experiences, Lisa, how can a student optimize their application and stand out? Well-rounded versus focused approach. What's your thoughts?
Well, I think it's always important to be sure, if you are considering dual applying, that you do a well-rounded application. And residency programs want to see quality over quantity. So somebody did ask about those number of experiences, and there's some data available talking about how many experiences from your school. The school can see how many students entered 10 experiences, how many did a little less, so they may be willing to share that with you. You don't want to just do 10 experiences because you're allowed to do 10. You don't want to expand that if you really feel like you have 8 or you have 7. And so doing a well-rounded, programs want to see a little leadership, a little teaching, a little research if you have it. They want to see that you didn't just study. They want to see that you actually did some other things along with being in school, but don't feel like if you didn't do that, that you are going to be handicapped in some way in the application process. So being sure that you do the well-rounded, but also focus on the things that are most meaningful to you.
Absolutely, I would agree. Well-rounded is definitely the way to go. And making sure that you are doing a great job in how you describe those experiences as well. Like we had already talked about, all of that matters. That can help you stand out, and being intentional about what you choose to put in your application, that you, like Lisa said, is not only extremely meaningful to you, but it also showcases the skills, the traits, the character that you want these programs to see in you. You know that these are important for this specialty, and you want them to know, I have what it takes to be a great physician in this specialty.
And one thing to remember is we did have a question, a direct question about, can programs see if you're dual applying? And programs cannot. Programs only see what applications you submit, what application components you submit to them. They don't see what you submit or what specialties you apply to.
So the next question, Lisa, what are some things third years can do during their time in clinics, so on rotation, to help build their CV and become a more competitive applicant?
So being sure that they're taking advantages of all the resources that their core sites may give them. So any advantages that they can build on their CV can be like if they're doing noontime journal clubs or those type things. They can start building, not just being in a journal club, but starting that journal club or being in leadership in some of the clubs and some of the things that you're being offered at your rotation sites, doing community activities at your rotation sites. So a lot of the hospitals and a lot of facilities are going to be doing things out in the community and taking advantage of that. I always say, don't ever miss an opportunity to become involved at your core site, to become involved in the communities, and to ask the physicians about their residency journey. So the networking aspect of it, but then building your CV from the things you can be involved in at your core sites and when you go on your audition rotations also.
I have a lot of my third years that will do some volunteering. They'll pick one organization that they know is pretty flexible, and they will serve in that organization. Again, like Lisa said, getting involved in the community where your core site is for training, finding one organization to volunteer at. And it may be that you only can volunteer, say, 4 hours a month, but it shows these programs, when you pick an organization and you serve on in that organization, volunteering a couple times a month, it's a longitudinal quality experience. So you're showing a commitment, and you fit in what you are able to. And sometimes the focus is just, in third year, there are going to be some rotations. It's just too hard to try to do anything else. That's okay. Focus on strong academics, performing well. You want to know another way to really help yourself become a competitive applicant is perform well on your clinical rotations, and great letters of recommendation from preceptors can help with that as well. So a lot of students forget about that part, is what preceptors say about you in those letters of rec that you have uploaded your application can have a huge impact. And yes, third year preceptors can write letters for you. And so that's another component we sometimes forget about, that that can make me a pretty competitive applicant when a preceptor is praising me and speaking to my skills in the clinical setting in a very positive way. So Lisa, one question, what should we include or exclude from our applications? That's kind of a very broad question. But what advice do you have for someone when they're looking at everything and trying to decide what to include and not include?
Well, I think the biggest thing to include is the experiences that have shaped you, the experiences that have made you want to come to medical school or want to continue in a certain specialty. So being sure that you're intentional, again, I know we keep saying that word, but be intentional about what you include. And I think in the last few years, the biggest thing I can tell you to exclude is a lot of personal information. Being sure that when you, suppose you were on a leave of absence, you didn't do well in first year, you had to go on a leave of absence, and you need to explain that. Here's what I did during that time. Here's how I came back to medical school ready to push forward and ready to do better in my academics. Don't say, well, my longtime partner of 10 years just broke up with me and I had to, you know, yes, that may have been what happened, but you can say I had personal struggles that, you know, as a result of that, I was not able to focus on my studies. I took some time, I stepped back. Here's what I did to improve, you know, my academics. You want to be sure and not give them too much information on personal information like that, because you don't want them to think that if you have a hard time in residency, you're going to need time off. Because programs want to see what happened. They want to see how you fixed it and that you're going to move forward from it. They don't worry about your academic struggles as much as they do personal or professionalism struggles. So being sure that you're very intentional on what you include and then excluding too much personal information, because that does open you up to discussing it during your application process.
Yeah, absolutely. Too much detail can certainly hurt a little bit too much sometimes. So let's jump to the next question. How can DOs stand out and improve their chances of matching into competitive specialties like orthopedic surgery, dermatology, and plastic surgery?
So with ortho, being sure that your academics are right on course, looking at the national resources for scoring, and also your clinical skills. So orthopedics, they want to know about your clinical skills, any specialty, competitive specialty, any specialty in general are going to want to hear about your clinical skills. But for those very competitive specialties, those national organizations, those networking experiences, and also those audition rotations can really set you up for success. Now, don't be fooled. Somebody asked in the chat, if I got an audition, even though I didn't think I was going to get an audition, I got an audition. Does that mean I'm probably going to get an interview and I don't need to dual apply? Well, it doesn't really mean that. You really need to be careful, because we have seen an increase in the last few years of students who do get auditions, but don't get that interview or don't get ranked by that program. So still assessing your competitiveness and being self-aware of where you do stand in that field. So the networking, I think, is a huge aspect of standing out in competitive specialties.
Yeah, and specialties like derm, definitely research and publications is a big factor. But one of the best things you can do when it comes to improving your match opportunity with these highly competitive specialties is, again, applying to right fit programs. So focusing on those highly DO friendly programs definitely helps. You know, making sure that you're applying to programs that take DOs, that have historically been taking DOs. They've been successful at matching into the programs, making sure that you're applying and auditioning at those programs. I can't tell you how many students will try. I actually had a student last year, he did an audition with a program that had never taken a DO. And he thought, oh, I got an audition with them. This is amazing. The program, while he was there, flat out told him, oh yeah, sorry, we aren't going to be giving you an interview. We don't take DOs. He was like, but you took me for an audition. And unfortunately that happens, is because they're not filtering by whether you're an MD or a DO for the auditions. They're assuming that you're doing your homework to only audition at programs that are right fit. You know, that they take, that your profile meets what they typically will take. And so you're not going to change the minds of a program. You're not going to be the one. Typically it happens, don't get wrong, but don't assume. And so if you want to improve your odds of matching into a highly competitive specialty, be very intentional about those programs. And like Lisa said, networking, connecting, doing auditions. Auditions are critical for these procedural heavy specialties. More and more of these programs are really relying on whether or not you auditioned to decide whether or not they're going to give you an interview, because they want to see how you performed in that clinical setting. Getting strong letters of rec from physicians in that specialty also helps quite a bit. So I know we are out of time, unfortunately. So we'll try to, respond to a few more questions if we can after, we can post a couple more responses for those that got posted that we couldn't respond to live. But we want to thank, I want to thank you, Lisa, so much for your expertise and your willingness to join this audience and share your knowledge with them. For our attendees, if you have any questions, please contact us directly at aogme@ aacom.org. And this concludes our webinar, and thanks again, everyone, for joining us, and have a great rest of your evening.